Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today's topic of discussion is education. On the conversation on education, I want to talk about staying safe when you find yourself in a dangerous or a situation that could potentially become dangerous. In the last video that I posted, the last full-length video anyway, I talked a little bit about my stalking situation and how there's a certain moment, like a pivotal moment in the healing journey from that, where I had to make some key decisions on how to repair some of the damage that was done in my trying to get distance from that situation. And so what I want to do in this video is give you a few tidbits of wisdom on how to protect yourself, safeguard yourself from stalking. And so I think myself personally, my belief is that the number one reason why someone wants to stalk you is to develop a deep understanding of your patterns of behavior. And so the best thing to do, I think, rather than be reactive in the ways that you make yourself less predictable, is best if you do it right out of the gate, just as a norm, so that anyone who is thinking about targeting you recognizes up front that it's a big investment, and hopefully you're going to deter the people who don't have the resources to make that investment, minimizing your chances of being a target. And so one of the first tips, I think, is something that people really don't think a whole heck of a lot about, but is one of my first signals that I was getting stalked and that the stalking was getting really aggressive, was first when I was doing my routine shopping. So I think one of my first key indicators that something wasn't right, that something wasn't normal, were some of the signals that I was getting when I was going grocery shopping. And so I was someone, key word of emphasis there, who would go line by line. I would go line by line because I'm someone who can be very forgetful when I go grocery shopping if I don't have a list in front of me. And so I would go line by line because recall, recognition, if I see what I had originally thought that I wanted before going to the grocery store, then chances are I'm going to remember it and I'm going to pick it up. So I was very predictable in the way that I navigated any grocery store because I was sort of at the very end, whichever end, and I would slowly meander my way through the grocery store. So clearly I'm someone who loves grocery shopping. I love exploring different foods, even if I don't try it, like reading and seeing all the new things that are out there. And I started to realize that someone was tailing me. So someone wasn't just doing sort of the same circuit that I was doing, but was paying attention to what I was putting in my cart. And only when this happened, maybe on 4 or 5 occasions, that I recognized that this was a pattern. It was something that I had never experienced before. Like, I am a boring grocery shopper, but like within the span of maybe 2 months, I had recognized that people were paying attention to what I was putting in my cart. And so that was my first key flag. And then when I was thinking about that and how that played into different conversations where details about what I was doing like really shouldn't have been things that they knew, that was when I started to pair together how the people who I felt were tracking what I was putting in my grocery store linked to the people who somehow knew information about what I was doing when I was doing it alone, when I wasn't anywhere near them and there was no reason for them to know that those were the activities that I was engaging in. First signal. Now, my second signal that things were escalating is once that had happened, I had decided that it was time for me to move. I was ready. I was getting ready to move anyway. And so I decided to move away. And so when I realized that I had been found and like my location had been found and the stalking was continuing, was when I realized first and foremost that my mail was getting tampered with. So at that point, I was receiving some things in physical mail, and I had realized like my mail had been opened and then there was a very poor attempt at reclosing it. And the first time that this happened, it was immediately alarm flags because I am someone who has at that point received mail quite a bit in my life. Like, I know what tempered mail looks like. Like, I don't need someone to validate that. But then I realized like it must have been the same people. By the time I decided to leave, I had already recognized that there's a significant pattern of behavior. My leaving in and of itself created a lot of warning bells and a lot of people trying to contact me, and I really made a point to stay quiet. So when I started to see that my mail was getting tampered with, I was like, okay, I've been found and now they're tampering with my mail. And I don't think anyone who isn't like sharing the same home as you should have any business looking at your mail. And so my feedback at this stage is if you do not need to have snail mail, like if there is no need for you to have physical mail sent to your home address, I have made a point to make all of my mail electronic. So all of my mail is going to be arriving to an inbox or not arriving at all. It can be something that I can go into my self-service interface and like manage on my own time, but I have limited to every degree possible the amount of mail that I receive because I recognize that people use mail to get a better sense of who you are as a person and of what you're doing and of like the bills that you're paying and so on and so forth. I am not someone who is particularly interesting. Like, these are not details that I think would be interesting to anyone who isn't stalking you, right? Like, because like if you're not a celebrity, then why would anyone care, A, to know what you're grocery shopping for, and then B, like what mail you're receiving. But then it started to escalate. So not just mail, but then my Amazon packages started to look like they were tampered with. And then that escalated to my Instacart. So I used to order Instacart quite a bit, especially when I lived in Victoria, because it's a really rural area. If you don't have a car, it's really challenging to get around. And I didn't need to, and I didn't want to as well, because one of the reasons why I targeted Victoria was because it was rural and there was massive COVID outbreaks happening. And I wanted absolutely nothing to do with those outbreaks. So moving to Victoria was helping me achieve first distance and giving me the opportunity to really focus on my personal projects in isolation and in solitude. It gave me the ability to kind of stay protected from what was a COVID outbreak at that point in time. But then when I started to realize that my Amazon packages were getting tampered with, I started to really become very cognizant and started to pay closer attention to all of the things that were delivered to my house. And then that was when I realized that even my Instacart, so my grocery deliveries, were being tampered with, but to the point where I was afraid that they were getting laced, like my perishable items were getting laced. And so this created a lot of complexity. At this point, like I felt I was not safe, and especially with some of the other intimidating activities that were going on around my home at that point in time. And I had mentioned that I had ended up going to shelters for women who are escaping violence because I was not safe. Like I was not able to stay anywhere alone. And one of the things that I learned in one of those shelters is that you want video footage at all times. Like if there's something happening, even if you don't fully understand what is going on, if your spidey senses are going off, you just pull out your phone and you get ready to record. And so that is something that I have started to do. Like rather than have a fear response, start to escape and try to withdraw, I want to record. Like I want to record how things are building up. And typically I have found anyone that has really raised suspicion, when I bring out my phone, it's almost its own confirmation because of the way that they react when they see the phone, right? So someone who is actually watching you, who is actually tailing you for whoever and for whatever, like if you bring out your phone and you show them that you see them, there's a reaction there. Like if someone is just there because they're doing their own thing and you pull out their phone, they don't care, they don't notice. But someone who is watching you notices when you pull out your phone, and they'll do everything they can to not be recorded by you. And so this for me is a full-on confirmation, and it gives me the green light. It validates my own suspicions when I think that there's something wrong. And it's helped me quite a bit. It's helped me quite a lot, having the confidence and the courage and the bravery to pull out my phone. Because before I used to be like, it's kind of awkward if I'm pulling out my phone on someone. But I realized like if you pull out your phone and the person really has nothing to do with you, like they're there for their own reasons, they don't even notice you pulling out your phone. But if you're pulling out your phone for someone who is actually killing you, they absolutely notice, and they absolutely do not want to be recorded. It is a massive reflex that we all need to develop to stay safe and to safeguard ourselves from stalking. And while I'm quite sure that like my garbage had been gone through to see like what kinds of things I was using on a day-to-day basis, I mean, that I have very little control over. If someone wants to kind of go through my garbage, what can I do? But like if someone is that involved in understanding your patterns, understanding your routines, understanding, you know, the things that you shop for, the products that you shop for, the foods that you stop for, that is not a safe situation. That means you're very much targeted. And I think that rather than talk yourself out of it or let people talk you out of it, you just need to practice much more awareness, right? And so for me, like I rarely, if ever, get mail at all anymore, because I realize like, you know, while it's not as convenient to have to go to the store, at least I have a track of like from the moment that I've selected something, I pick something up and I bring it home, I know that it hasn't been tampered with. And because I've had so many of my things tampered with in transit, from like when I ordered it to when it gets to my house, like I know it's not the state that it should be in for something that's brand new. It's just a protocol that I follow now. I now make sure that unless it's absolutely necessary, I can either pick up my mail or I can have it couriered if I have to have it delivered to me, or not at all. Like I pick it up at the store. Like there are different really reflexes that you develop when it is the case that you're trying to mitigate against some of the escalating risks that come with stalking. And so stalking is also one of those things where it's not taken seriously by law enforcement unless you can really establish a pattern. So for me, like until I had like a strong pattern that I could provide, like I knew that I was not going to get a whole heck of a lot of help. And this is I feel like this is what I see even online when I hear other people talk about their stalking situations. It's not taken as seriously as it should be. I think there are different communities, there are different outlets that are available for people who are dealing with violence, who know how to be involved, right? Who understand like how to support, how to protect, and how to enable you to get distance from that. Leveraging law enforcement, of course, is a lever, but over and above law enforcement is their ability to create a shield for you that is beyond paper, right? Because when to get a restraining order, I think there's a lot of checks and balances that might not necessarily be the case for you if you haven't been able to get a strong tracking record of a stalker. If the person who is stalking you is smart enough to make sure that it's really very difficult to trace that stalking back to them. I mean, still have people who understand what's going on, who understand the patterns of behavior that you're dealing with, supporting you. Because until then, like even I wasn't sure so far beyond what I had ever experienced. Only when I brought my case to like people who worked within that scope of work did they tell me, yeah, this is exactly how stalking happens. It is a cookie cutter case of stalking, and I wouldn't know that because it's not like I have a whole wealth of experience dealing with it in the past. But like these are some of the things that I've done to safeguard myself, and I think that we all should have more conversations around how we safeguard ourselves from this kind of targeting. And I think also we always assume that it's someone we don't know. Like when we see movies where people are abducted, we think it's like a stranger who's targeted us, and as a result of that, like we're sort of dealing with visceral violence. And while I do believe that there are definitely a proportion of people who are stalked and abducted by strangers, I think the majority of people is people who we know, but we don't know well because they wear multiple faces. And so I wanted to come in here and talk a little bit about that. I wanted to kickstart the conversation around that because I think that you probably have different things that maybe you've experienced that have given you a certain sixth sense around how to manage your safety around people who are thinking about doing something that's not necessarily the best, or how you manage to create distance from someone who is stalking you. As what are some of the things that you survived and dealt with, and what are some of the reflexes that you've cultivated as a byproduct of that? And let's share, because I think that there are certain kinds of violence that is really hard to relate to one another about, or hard to mitigate those things from happening. Or maybe right now you're targeted and you don't know because you're not looking at the signs that would be a telling factor that maybe you've been targeted by someone who's stalking you. And stalking can all have a variety of different motivations and justifications for it, but in all cases, safety is definitely a factor that you need to take very seriously. There's very little cases of stalking that just dissipate into nothing. Like they always escalate into greater violence as these people develop more courage, more confidence, and more, I guess, boldness to do what it is that they actually are thinking about doing, which is the reason why they're stalking you in the first place. So I wanted to come in here and talk about that. It's some food for thought for you. And frankly, I mean, there's a lot of healing that comes after that kind of violence, especially when it's like the slow burn violence where you're dealing with it over a long, extensive period of time. And while there's lots of trauma with those very violent like situations that are sort of snapshot in time violences as well, I think that we have a lot less conversations happening around the slow burn violence, the violence that creates the need to persevere, to endure, and to cultivate resilience, because it's even over time, years, months, so on. I mean, it's something that you have to figure out how to manage and still live your day-to-day life, right? In any case, if you're looking to cultivate these self-mastery skills that help you foster that sense of resilience, that perseverance and endurance, then I do definitely invite you to take a look at our website. We offer adult programs that give you the ability to create a sense of alignment within your life. That's really the core essence of these workshops. And so with that alignment gives you the ability to cultivate the self-mastery required to have the intentionality and the mindfulness to get there. We do also, as a core offering, offer leadership competencies for children. So we think leadership starts as young as possible. And these are competencies that we all have by varying degrees. But I think that it's something that we always want to invest further into so that our children have the ability to think critically, to have that thought exploration, the intellectual curiosity that they need to become leaders of tomorrow, and to really cultivate and build into their sense of individuality. And so we have these digital, virtual, continuous learning programs where you can go at your own pace. It's all pre-recorded. You have a community space online as well, dedicated only to those who are progressing through these courses. So something for everyone in your family, something definitely for you. We have 4 core modules focusing on self-concept, autonomy, self-efficacy, and compassion. And so we invite you to subscribe. We invite you to join the conversation here on our YouTube. We invite you to join the conversation on our website. Definitely join our newsletter. We like to offer different courses and different events for free, and just be part of our game changer community. So that was the topic of discussion for today. I hope it was helpful. I hope it was something that gives you something to think about. And again, like if there's a tidbit of wisdom that you would like to give, then I suggest that you provide it down below. And I look forward to chatting with all of you again very soon. We'll talk to you later.